Debbie Fleming Caffery is celebrated as a leading photographer from the American South. She's renowned for capturing the essence of Louisiana's people and culture. But her work extends beyond the South with significant work in Mexico, France, and throughout the United States. Caffery immerses herself in the communities she photographs in each location, emphasizing deep emotional connections between people and place. Today, on the Crit House, Debbie Fleming Caffery discusses her MyFIVE images from Roy de Carava, Dorothea Lange, Larry Fink, William Gedney, and her grandfather, Robert Angers. Well, Debbie Fleming Caffery, it's an honor to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us. You are one of the few people who I've been able to get on the program who have been referenced by other photographers as creating art that has been influential to them. So when other photographers have their MyFIVE, your images from two different photographers have been selected.
Thank you so much.
You are revered in the photographic community.
Thank goodness.
So I know you don't like talking about yourself, but how do you talk about yourself when you tell people about what kind of photography you do?
Well, I've been photographing for 50-something years. So most of the times I say, well, you should buy a book or look at my pictures or buy a picture,
Well, and they should, and hopefully after this conversation, people will go out and buy those books.
So, but most of those people that ask me are people that really don't know anything about what I've been doing. They've heard about it for years or seen my pictures, or I don't know. But I just tell people that I started, I tell them my history, basically, that I get attracted to a project, I stay with it for a really long time. For instance, like the sugarcane harvesting, I'm still photographing around the sugar mills. And I tell them that actually they have to get emotionally involved and stick it out and not go, if they think they have a project, not just put a couple of days in it or, weeks in it. And, or your pictures are basically going to be, just look like that you did it, and you see a lot of that today, I think, in photography, people not putting the time in or having the finances to do it because it's so expensive.
Yeah. So now you chose 5 images to discuss for this MyFIVE series, and some people find that to be like a challenge to try to come up with 5 images. Did you go back to like those images that influenced you when you were a young artist, or how did you come up with those 5 images?
Well, one of the images the first image I've ever was introduced to, I decided not to put it in the group. It's a picture by Danny Line that when I was in college in Lafayette, a teacher showed me. And it's a picture of a bed with a guy leaning over a woman, and she's got a sheet on and you can kind of see her face. And then there are 2 cats in front looking at the camera. And I love that picture. It's the first picture I ever saw, But then when I went to the Art Institute, I started learning about Dorothea Lange and all the, Imogen Cunningham was around hanging out with everybody. And, I took the history of photography and all these people, they presented so many people like Dorothea Lange. And so that's, so I decided not to show the first picture, but to show the pictures that really had an effect on me and what I was interested in.
Well, let's go take a look at those images.
Okay.
Your first image is from Roy de Carava.
Well, you see, I don't remember when I saw that picture. It's just a picture that's been in my life, in my eyes and thoughts, I don't.
Uh-huh.
but I love this photograph because growing up, I saw scenes like this. I shouldn't use the word love exactly, but it really gets to me, this picture, because of the environment in Louisiana I lived in. And I thought about all the people who save their money in the African American community to buy a beautiful dress for their daughter's graduation or their communion or whatever real important event in their lives. And they lived in neighborhoods, that were filled with poverty and houses falling down. And so when I saw that when I was in San Francisco, it brought back memories of what I saw growing up. And it just was something I've never been able to forget.
Your second image comes from Dorothea Lange.
Mhm.
What's the story and what's the influence from Dorothea on you?
Well, just looking at the picture, so beautiful and moving and sad and heartbreaking, knowing he's working in the cotton fields. And it reminds me of seeing people when I was young and growing up until, the field labor became pretty much non-existent because of big tractors. Um, Seeing people out in the fields working hard and photographing them and talking to them while they're working. And it just, but I saw this all my life, it's not just when I started photographing, because I grew up in a town that was surrounded by sugarcane fields. And I also lived across the bayou from a sugar mill where we could see people working, like this man on a barge loading sugar. And, so I think the things that I saw as a child have stayed with me and made me, do what I do, I guess. Have inspired me.
So when we first started doing this program, the first person that I had on to talk to was Sam Abel. Do you know Sam?
Uh-huh.
So this was one of the images that Sam chose as well, as his
Interesting.
5 images of influence. So when you put it up there, it excited me because Sam is one of my all-time favorite people, and I thought there might be a kinship between the two of you some way. So your third image comes from Larry Fink. Tell us about this one and how this is here.
Well, Larry did so much work in on the civil rights, and I always loved his work. And I'm a good friend of he died. A friend of his, and his wife is a really good friend of mine as well. And through the years of my photography career, I would run into Larry, and he invited me to his house, and where I met his wife, and she became my best friend.
Mm.
And so I saw all kinds of work he's done, and I love his work because it's always, to me, emotional and right. He's right there, he's right there. And so when you asked me to do this, I looked through his work, a lot of his work, to see which one was my favorite. And I had a hard time deciding. But then when I came across this one, I thought, well, this is perfect for the times. I know I'm being political, but it's just such an extraordinary picture. I wish I had taken it, and been there. And I was in high school at that point, and I didn't even know how to use a camera, but I just think this is just one of those unbelievable pictures that should be in every museum collection in the world.
Well, I always think that's the highest praise you can say about a photograph is I wish I had taken that. Your fourth image comes from a photographer I don't know an awful lot about, William Gedney.
I don't know a lot about him either. In fact, I didn't even know his name. And I've seen this picture published before, and I don't know, in different publications. One was an Aperture book. It was just a little picture of it. And it's been popping in and out of my mind. And so I had to figure out how to get the go on the internet and describe the picture to get the guy's name and then get the title. And so it's so interesting. These little girls all have a leg up, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating about it. But it reminds me also of going into some old houses when I was a child with my mother or a grandmother or somebody taking somebody food. And I just think it's extraordinary. And all I know is he was from Kentucky. And I read something recently that he stayed with his family for 19 days, two different times, but 19 days in all when he was doing these photographs. And I thought, well, he's my kind of guy. You know, I even like the picture more.
Well, I love seeing all of the images that you've chosen, because I can see from the work that you do how there's a link between your work and these as well. And now we go back into your family. This is your grandfather,
Yes.
your fifth and final image. And tell us about this image and your grandfather and how he influenced your photography.
Well, my grandfather influenced me a lot, I can tell you. I lived right down the block from his house. And so every day after school, from when I was in kindergarten till the end of 7th grade, pretty much every day I would go to his house. And my grandmother would be there, but he'd be there too. And he would be the babysitter. And he'd take me on adventures. And but sometimes he'd take me back to his office, and then he'd say, let's go next door and we're going to see what pictures Mr. Bro has in the window. Because there was a big window facing the street where the guy, Mr. Bro, would change photographs, all the time. So we used to do that. And once I remember going into the photo place, but that was it. But anyway, my grandfather used to take me out in the sugarcane fields and to a sugar mill, because he was very friendly, and he was a marshal at one time and everybody knew him. And so we'd go to the sugar mill and we'd go in the place where they would collect sugar to test it and stuff. And that's what he considered babysitting, visiting his friends. Okay. And he just had to drag me along. Okay. So anyway, then we'd go to a guy in the that had a little store in the cane fields making homemade syrup, and often the cane fields would be burning. And that always scared me, that people would get burned or the whole world would catch on fire. I was raised a Catholic, and I could see the devil coming out, like, and but I got over that, okay. And so also another place he would take me was to a bar. And it was right across from the train station. And he'd sit me down next to him, and now I realize it was whiskey. I had no idea what he was drinking. And he'd give me a Coke, and I'd watch the trains through the window, coming in. And same thing. He was meeting a certain group of guys, and they talked, whatever they were talking about, I don't remember. And then he'd bring me back to my grandmother's, and then my mom would pick me up. So this went on, things like this, these kind of adventures. And I'm obsessed with cantinas, as I think I might have told you.
You did.
I see in cantinas in Mexico, people bring their kids in there, and it's more of it's not a place where, it's a place where a lot of people get drunk, of course, but there's a lot of times you see people bringing food or selling food. It's more of a homey thing, and especially in the countryside of Mexico.
Well, Debbie Fleming Caffery, 5 great images, and really thank you so much for coming on the program. It's I was
I was especially excited because I had just this past weekend gone, as I told you before we started, up to a show up at the Addison Gallery in Andover, a show on Southern photography. And there was one of your big, beautiful images on the wall representing Southern photography. It's great to see. And I was excited to know that I was going to be talking to you in a short period of time.
Thanks. Well, that's a project in Mississippi and North Louisiana on the death of the small communities. That's from there.
Okay, thank you. Well, and we would like to encourage everybody to go and buy a book or two.
Sure.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching The Crit House.